In the aftermath of the Democratic Party's most recent destruction, there are articles and commentators talking about how to rebuild the party, how to fix it. And this is actually reminding me of 2016 all over again. Except back then I didn't do a video about it because at the time I recognized it would be a Herculean task and something that truly might not happen ever, or at least in my lifetime. The first thing to acknowledge is money in politics. Now, I truly wish that this was taught in schools, right? The idea of, due to elections no longer being publicly financed, and rather the decision with Citizens United to determine that money was free speech, corporations are able to offer tremendous bribes to political candidates, which in turn influences the way they vote and causes them to prioritize either the corporation or the big donor over the American people. For example, one of the biggest reasons you don't see any meaningful gun laws passed is because the NRA gives Republican politicians across the board money to vote down any type of legislation. We can go down. I mean, and hell, the fact that you have so many American politicians who are honestly more loyal to the Israeli government and Netanyahu than their own government and their own people is a testament to money in politics, because APAC and other groups pay them to be pro-Israeli government and then smear anyone who criticizes the policies of that apartheid state as being anti-Semitic, even if you don't mention anything about Jewish people, because this is not about someone's religion, it's about policies. But they know that they're being facetious on purpose. So the reason I bring up money in politics is the most important thing is because people often make the mistake of believing that just because you get rid of whoever you interpret the party's leader to be, then suddenly things will get better, or there's going to be this like big shift in their results and whatever. But the truth is, we can play a game of switching these people out until we're blue in the face. And as long as they have the same donors, you're going to see the same policies or approach to dealing with issues, right? A lot of incrementalism, a lot of, not really addressing major societal ills. So when we got rid of Harry Reid, he was replaced with Schumer as majority leader, or I guess minority leader for a time. And you really haven't seen an actual difference in terms of legislation, the priorities of the party. Same thing in the House. When Pelosi finally stepped down and was replaced by Jeffries, you're seeing the same positions taken on virtually every issue, because whether you get rid of one of these people or a majority of them, if you don't root out the core problem, which is the corrupting influence of financial contributions from either big donors or corporations to these people, you're not going to see a shift in their behavior. And this ties into Harris's refusal to take a more pro-Palestine stance in the Israeli-Hamas conflict, which may have played a direct role in her narrowly losing Michigan. We don't know yet, but still. Her refusal to side more with Palestine, either by imposing a block on financial aid to Israel or not selling them weapons anymore. This was all tied to being afraid to piss off donors who are pro Netanyahu. This whole like middle of the road thing. And that's also been another issue. A lot of times, and you're seeing this with some commentators, the Democratic Party lost because they were too far left. That is complete and utter nonsense. In fact, actually, in many instances, members of the party in recent years have tried to replicate the Republicans that they run against. You had Doug Jones running in Alabama, a guy who only won his seat because he was running against Roy Moore. And after winning his Senate seat in this extremely red state, he votes against banking regulations, which in turn upsets a lot of progressives and makes it to where they don't want to turn out for him in a race where in a race in a state where he is most certainly not going to get any Republican votes despite his attempts to appeal to them. On the national level, you saw this with Harris. Instead of campaigning with somebody like Bernie, like AOC, like Ro Khanna, she decides to spend copious amounts of time with Liz Cheney, a lady so despised by her own party that when she was up for re-election the last time, she couldn't make it out of the primary and only received about, I think it was 20 something, 25, 26% of the vote against her primary. She just got completely blown out. And this approach was clearly meant to entice Republicans, right-leaning people to vote for Harris, right? Oh, I may be a Republican, but I respect Harris and want to support her because she also supports the Constitution. But the truth is, most Republicans are going to vote for the Republican. Most Democrats are going to vote for the Democrat. You have nothing to gain and everything to lose by pissing off the people who are by default on your side in some misguided belief that if you court enough itty bitty amounts of members from the other side, it'll be enough to win. That is another thing that leads to their destruction. And it's again tied back to certain central ideas. I really despise the phrase "vote blue no matter who" because it led to someone like Joe Manchin, who voted down much of fellow Democratic Party member and President Biden's Build Back Better legislation and watered it down and just gave him a much bigger headache than he would have received from a Republican, because you don't expect the opposing party to side with you and work with you, but you do expect the people of your own party to work with you. So him and Sinema over there in Arizona, they are a good example of like why we need to get rid of Blue MAGA. Because make no mistake, Blue MAGA is another factor that led to this election cycle being so disastrous for Democrats. You had this aging, clearly cognitively declining old man who people did not think would survive another 4 years in office, even if they liked him more than Trump or liked him personally. But all the members of his party, the top ones, right? And even some people who are adjacent to his party, like Bernie, endorsed him. They propped him up. And then what happened? When the Frankenstein monster they created couldn't be hidden anymore, right? When he showed up at that debate with Trump, suddenly they pulled him out and they switched him for someone else who, they like to say Harris didn't receive any votes. That, whatever. The point I'm making here is that you cannot have a party that wants to improve, wants to win seats, right? But it is so isolating of outside criticism that it defends its members under almost any circumstance. Like, if I think of the last couple of years, it was the Bob Menendez thing where he did end up getting Democratic pressure to resign. Jesse Jackson Jr., right? There's a few times where Democrats will turn on each other, but it's almost never over policy, like major policy disagreements. Like you'll see, Biden wag his fist over Manchin messing up his agenda, but you don't see him going to West Virginia and telling the people, hey, he's trying to stop you from getting a wage increase. He's trying, you don't see that because they're cowardly. They don't, and also they're very tribalistic. They criticize the Republicans as being a cult, but if you're an elected official in the Democratic Party, you're very likely to see the cult of the DNC wrap themselves around you to insulate any critiques or our primary challenges. Now, the other part of this is, so again, all this stuff is tying into each other, right? The corruption when it comes to just all these different donors, the cult-like status of the party, the whole vote blue no matter who people, Blue MAGA. But the other part of this, the last example that we should draw out here, is the inability to stand for things that excite people. Whether you like Trump or not, and I do not, the one thing you have to give him credit for is that he has a set of defined positions that people who like him, even if it's a lie, can latch onto and say, "Oh, he stands for this." Right? Ever since his first presidential campaign, 9 years ago, his key issue has been immigration. He always talks about the border. Oh my God, the caravan. Oh my God, the migrants. Where's my wall? Yada yada yada. But the point of that is to say he has taken an issue, and even if he's not thought about it deeply, even if he's not proposing something you or I agree with, it is easily identifiable with him. I'm just asking point blank. What the hell did Kamala Harris stand for? What was her key issue that when you think, oh, Vice President Harris, oh yeah, this is what she led on. Unfortunately, well, during her campaign it was Roe, but during her tenure as VP, it was her being the supposed border czar. And I tried to be nice and say Biden put her in a screwed up situation because he did. But imagine if Harris, during her presidential campaign, the one that just got annihilated a few days ago, went to a state like Iowa, whether she had on her stilettos or whatever other stuff she'd like to wear, just because people like to pander with outfits, but let's just regular attire that she has, and just sat there with some farmers talking about agriculture. What if Harris went to a state like Michigan, and we talked about how they blocked the I think they blocked some pro-Palestine speakers from speaking at the DNC, which is disgusting. But what if Harris went to Michigan and met with pro-Palestine protesters, like just sat down with them and talked? What if she went to Texas and discussed business? But let's go even further than that. What if throughout this 4-month campaign that she had, she talked about raising the national minimum wage for the first time in was it 15 years? Lowering the cost of college to the point where it becomes free either gradually or with a single piece of legislation. Attempting to create a public option with the purpose of expanding it to single payer in the event that they're able to get enough seats in the House and Senate during the course of her 4-year presidency. If Harris offered this stuff, if she gave tangible, specific things that she wanted to do that weren't just, people can get mad at me for saying this, but Roe is a issue that mostly affects women, and it is a big part of the reason why Democrats saw a lot more women, just energized than before. But if she took these issues, which affect everyone, which are things that whether you agree with them or not, are well defined as, okay, I want this to be this, I want that to be that, it's really hard for me to believe that she would have lost the election as hard as she did or even lost at all. But like I said, this is bigger than Harris. Have her book right here. This is bigger than the truths we hold. I'm going to say the truths I hold. The actual issue here, and the reason I brought her up, is to say that Democrats, by and large, don't stand for anything. And the biggest, most important thing to a majority of members of Congress, whether they're senators or congressmen, is to get reelected and spend the next 2 to 6 years grandstanding, showing up on TV, giving these different interviews, to give off the illusion that you are fighting for some change that will benefit society in some major way. That is their whole purpose. It is careerism. It is self-serving. And honestly, it's really sad. Like, I'm looking at my Congress member, the one that I tried to primary, but couldn't because I had so little time. Like, I think it was like 5 or 6 weeks. And I know what they're going to do, right? They put out their statement, oh, I can't believe the American people would select President Trump, and I will do everything I can to stop his, da, 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 da. Because that's what they want. They want to be elected, reelected, which, the people of that district did, and then spend the next couple of years mostly giving some speeches, running their mouth, and fundraising so they can get back in office for another 2 years after that and keep the same process repeating over and over. And as much as people may dislike Congress, may say Congress is useless, ineffective, and it is, there is a serious disconnect between people saying they don't like Congress and then voting for these pricks every 2 to 6 years with repetition and consistency. And until you fix the corruption, get rid of the cult status of the members of the party feel towards each other, and the incentives to care more about your career than the people you call yourself, being elected to represent, you're never going to see a change. And they're going to keep on losing. And it's sad because Democrats, they've had supermajorities in the past, like in living memory. And they should be competitive in states like Texas and Florida and Georgia and North Carolina, hell, even South Carolina. But one of the reasons people are turning away from them is because they don't stand for anything except pleasing a couple of people in suits and ties and trying to further their own careers. You look at Pelosi and the Obamas and the Clintons. All these people are millionaires several times over, and they didn't get that way because they're smarter than you and me, or they have such great talents that have been recognized to where people are buying their products. No, they give paid speeches. They get elected to these seats after taking a bunch of money from donors who they scratched the back of during their term. And either during their term or after their term, they give a bunch of paid speeches or paid appearances that contribute to their overall net worth becoming so massive. And it leads to them being out of touch. That's why you saw Obama talking about for Harris, I think people who don't want to vote for her don't like women, and she went to the same schools as you. And it's like, you don't think maybe you should be trying to figure out what is causing them to not be attracted to her candidacy. Maybe that's something to do with the economy, or, I don't know, the fact that most people in the U.S. can't afford $1,000 emergency or live paycheck to paycheck. Again, just that's my point, that this party is run and controlled by people who are out of touch, who only care about themselves because they have no reason to care about anyone else. They know that they'll still get votes no matter what. And it's going to take a major societal shift and corroboration that I don't see coming anytime soon. I think this same thing happened in 2016. Democrats will probably pick up some seats during the next midterm. Maybe they win the next presidential election. But I can guarantee you this, no matter how much they lose, it's never going to cause those at the top to think we need to change, because they are incentivized financially to not fix issues. Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, or his Supreme Court justice overturned Roe v. Wade. Well, that's a good thing for them, because they can spend the next couple of years, if not decades, fundraising about it and putting out all those emails. Oh, look at what the Republicans did to your reproductive rights. Ugh. And it's just sad because the voters are getting scammed, and most of us don't even know it.